Now that we've finished beading our fully beaded Ferrari dress, which I'm so obsessed with already, today's the day we get to sew it into a dress. This dress is going to have a lining piece because I don't want all the stitching to come undone, and I don't want that sitting on the body because it can be quite scratchy. So I've got an extra piece of silk and I'm going to start by sewing the darts. I'm going to sew the darts on the beaded piece and the underneath piece as well. Having learned from sewing the McLaren dress, I'm going to use a zipper foot so I can get nice and close to the beadwork. And when sewing, I'm going so slow because I have snapped so many needles doing this. Also, having learnt from the McLaren dress, number one, don't put a car on the side seam, but hand stitch it first. So I'm going to hand base this before I end up putting it through the machine. That way nothing shifts and nothing moves. It also makes it a bit more professional because this dress really is couture. So sewing along the side seams of both the beaded piece and the underneath piece, now we get to stitch those two pieces together along the top and along the straps. I always do an understitch as well. That's what this white stitch is, and that way that keeps everything in place. This part was also incredibly hard when doing the strap. Make a scrunchie and pull it through, and usually this sausage method works fine for normal fabric, but because it's beads rubbing against beads, it's really hard to pull through, and I didn't want to pull too hard, otherwise that means beads would come off, and that is not good. Now that the pieces were sewn together and the one side seam was finished, now we get to finish the other side seam by putting in a zipper. Again, an invisible zipper is really hard to put in because you want to get really nice and close to the beads, but they kind of are in the way, so there's this level of trying to be really cautious but trying to get really close. Basically, once the two side seams are together with the lining piece underneath, all that's left to do is the hem. However, there is always beading left to do after sewing. I always have to go back through and do the side seams, clean up the edges, so the beading work is never really finished. After staying up late and finishing the beadwork on the bottom, all that was left to do was the split, and I hand did the hem. The hem was just a bias bind which I hand stitched because I didn't want to see anything on the front. Initially the McLaren dress was going to have a split, and it wasn't until I had it on that I didn't actually like it. So this is the first time I'm sewing in a split into one of these beaded dresses. So I just marked where I wanted the split to go, and then from there marked 1.5 centimeters. The innermost blue line is going to be my cutting line, and the outer blue line is going to be my sewing line. I sewed the lining piece and the outside piece together, and that's what created this split. Of course, I did an understitch so that piece doesn't roll out and look messy. Again, it's one of those, the beading work is never really finished until it's finished. There was a little bit left to do after sewing the split, and here I was just filling in a few of those little gaps just to make